George Tibil, Keith Fields, welcome to Acquiring Minds.
Nice to be here.
Good to be here.
George and Keith, you acquired an existing franchise business in the commercial cleaning space, so janitorial. It was a rocky transition, but you are optimistic about the future, big aspirations. Let's get right into it. George, would you start us off with some background on you, please? Then Keith, we'll go to you.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, Will. My background is a little bit unique. As you can hear, I do joke a lot where I spoke with people from Western New York that my accent is not really from locally here. I'm originally from Romania. I was born in Bucharest in Romania and moved to Brussels, to Belgium. Both of my parents had a military background. We moved a lot as kids, and I did my high school in Brussels in French, and played tennis my entire childhood, and I got a Division I scholarship to the U.S. And moved to Buffalo, New York, of all places, and started playing college. And I also did my background in finance. I went for a finance background. Got injured several times, with my tennis, had a bad back, and owned a painting franchise in college. College Pro Painters was one of the painting the business I owned for about a year, and pursued a career in banking. I worked in wealth management for about three and a half years. Lived in the Caribbean, where I worked for a private Swiss bank. Moved there with my wife. She was there for a med school. And came back, got my second degree in quantitative finance, financial mathematics, worked my visa up, and worked for M&T Bank, which is Fortune 500. It's headquartered in Buffalo, New York, and worked there for about 5 years in risk management, in model validation, quant, and got my green card. And that allows me to kind of the search of last year. So where I quit my banking job and ventured in the story which we're gonna be leading today. So
beautiful. Thanks, George. Keith?
Yeah, similar to George, not from Buffalo, but call it home now. I grew up in Tennessee, a small town outside of Nashville. Spent 4 years in the Marine Corps right after high school, and moved to Buffalo for college at the University of Buffalo. That's where George and I met, finance class, and we've kind of stuck together throughout his time apart, going to different countries and traveling all over. During that time, I was spent about 5 years in corporate banking, doing some different things with air, rail, and power. And then got an opportunity to work for a self-storage REIT. Spent about 5 years there, doing several different things, revenue management, business development, and then left as the director of acquisitions. So working on the acquisition side, a little bit familiar kind of as we moved into the ETA space. And our company, actually, the company that I worked for, got acquired early 2023, and that made my decision pretty easy to move on to the next thing, and we hit the ground running from there.
So this decision, you guys have known each other for years. I'm guessing, I'm imagining, beers in your dorm rooms in college, scheming about what entrepreneurial venture you'd eventually do. Is it one of these and that finally came to fruition, or not necessarily, not really? How did you decide to partner? How did you decide to choose this as the business opportunity you would pursue?
I wouldn't say
go ahead.
Go ahead, Keith. It definitely wasn't beers. For us, we were a little bit older going to college. We were there for a reason, and we actually got put in a group together, a finance class, and we just kind of connected. We both were shutting down the library every night, studying, working hard, and we took a class together and said, as a finance class, we said, this is what we want to do. We just got to figure out how to do it. And from there, once we graduated, on and off for the last decade, we've had business ventures together individually, Most not successful, some successful. And so, it was an attraction through work, work ethic and just seeing each other grind, a lot of the same energy and same goals and aspirations.
I love it. Here I was suggesting that you guys were partying through college, drunk, talking about taking over the world. But in fact, you were burning the midnight oil at the library, and that's what drew you together.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think, Will, one thing is when we were in college, kind of going towards the end of our senior year, I would say our aspiration was to work on that corporate ladder, right? We had high, I remember we took a financial reporting analysis, class together. We're like, wow, this looks so interesting, analyzing financial statements, going in. And so our kind of, vision there was to, work the corporate ladder, be successful, and climb as fast as we can on the finance world that we were preparing for. That changed, I would say, in the first couple of years after being in it and actually exploring the corporate lifestyle. And our ambition hasn't changed, but our focus and our identifying what's important to us changed in that last decade that we climbed. Yeah, we progressed towards. So,
well, that's a great kind of way to put it. Ambition is the same. It's just now the vision of how to manifest that ambition is different. What did you not like about corporate, or why did the path forward not stay going on a corporate career, which really had turned you on initially?
When you do everything right, and you become very successful at the job, right? We climbed the titles very fast. The income was going up, right? And we got to VP, SVP roles, right? Fairly quick in that mid-30s, and we were looking, on paper, we were extremely successful, right? Everyone around us, was very, proud of our accomplishments. But the more we were on this path, and I just speak for myself, I know Keith has kind of felt the same way, was the unfulfillment was getting worse and worse, right? Like I remember just driving from work and just looking back and saying, this is not, there's no intrinsic motivation, there's no fulfillment. And then, it helped, I was surrounding myself with higher level executives that are, many, many years ahead of me. And I was looking at their, day to day, and I was looking at their lifestyle, and there was nothing there that, attracted me to that lifestyle. And when those things conflict, right, when you're doing everything, the results are there, but then the level of satisfaction and motivation almost decreases gradually, there's a problem and you have to change something. So that's kind of my take on it.
Keith, was your experience the same?
Yeah, it's similar. For me, George and I, we push ourselves physically. We work out hard. We work hard in general. And I just kind of looked at it internally and said, I want to know what I'm made of. I want to know what I can do and what I'm capable of. And I knew that I wasn't able to push the limits where I was at, in the corporate world. And so that was one of the big motivators for me. I also think I have a little bit of a problem with authority, being told what to do, when to do, how to do it. Now, that doesn't change necessarily. You're at the mercy of customers and your employees and everything. So it's a bit different. But you have a lot more autonomy and control where we're at now. And so it's definitely the best decision I ever made, making that transition. And it's just internal, had to push myself more and find that challenge.
Mm-hmm. And so you didn't think, even though you guys were pushing hard, that's why you were successful relatively early, young, getting to high rungs of the ladder. Keith, you didn't feel like you felt like the job didn't push you as hard as you wanted to be pushed, or it was not enough edge to it?
Yeah, I really loved what I did in the real estate space. But being in that corporate ladder, you're always up against some kind of limitation. You're not always graded on the merits, right? It's what's in the budget to allow you to do the next thing. It's who's in the role to allow you to step into that next role. So, those limitations, I just really wanted to take the guardrails off and be able to go in any direction that I wanted.
All right. Well, spoken like an entrepreneur. And George, back to you. What you said about the looking ahead at the people who are above you on the corporate ladder and not actually wanting what they have, either professionally or personally, lifestyle-wise. I've heard that many times. In a very recent interview, which will have aired just a week or so before this one with Mike Day, said the same thing. He was an engineer at Boeing. Loved his time there, respect the organization, his colleagues. But as he looked, he was mid-40s, so he was a little bit further on, I think, than you guys. And it's and he wasn't the first person that I heard say it. This is a pattern. Look at you ask yourself where I am, how do I feel about what I'm doing, and so on. And then part B of that question is, and do I even want what future 10 years on this path looks like? And then you have a model right ahead of you, your boss or your boss's boss or whatever. And if that ain't pretty, or if it's just not what you want, then that's usually a further sign to to change things up. So, great, guys. And maybe just an example or two of other business ventures, things you've gotten into in these intervening years.
I'll start with a very unsuccessful website that we were trying to start. And this I think this was a great lesson for us because we knew very little about building a website, and just going into a field that we saw the opportunity. Was I believe, Keith, it was a local marketplace that we're trying to build. The need was there, but seeing the need and then executing on it, it's just they're two different things, right? And then we realized very early on that you need more execution than the vision and the big picture, right? And that was a huge lesson for us, where we spend I would say a couple months and some funds there, where we tried to build something that we really weren't technically prepared for it. So that was one thing that I kept in mind, and I'll let Keith bring the other one.
We've had a few real estate ventures that worked out. On my side, I was involved in a property preservation construction company, had ownership in that shortly after the 2008. So it was around 2010, 11. These bank-owned properties need maintained, inspections, things like that. So I had a little bit of a business there, and then exited. George also had a painting franchise in the past. I got into flipping before it got popular on TV. Once it got really competitive there, decided to move out. So we've done several different things over the years, but it's always been half in, half out, maintaining those corporate jobs while we're doing it. So they were great lessons, but we didn't go fully in until 2023.
And I think, Will, this is such an important point, is while we were, having our corporate, jobs, and we kept, our vision and our goals, I would say we'll get hot and cold several times throughout the year, right? Where we're basically, starting several ventures, but we realized that, the only way to actually, move forward is to go all in our next venture. And this is exactly what we did with, last year, when we decided and we saw the niche, we saw the opportunity, and we didn't let go. And I think there were, some reasons for us to, back up or just look for, a different size business. There was a lot of other things we could have done, but the last decade of just being, in that middle, right, and just, having our aspirations and our goals, right, and not really, it made us, take the decision last year. So that was, that's an important point, I think. And I always advise people to just, it's very difficult when you there's a saying is what stands behind a great life, and it's a good life, right? So for us, we had that good life, going on, and it's very challenging when you have, that good life to actually, go on and take a leap of faith and hopefully experience that great life that we're.
Great. I do agree that is a great point or insight, that it took kind of going all in. You feel like the recipe for really finally getting something off the ground or getting something material moving was going all in. burning the boats is my favorite term of art when it comes to that. College pro painters, George, before we got to get off your backstory here and get into the meat of the story, but I just can't let that go because that one has come up a number of times with other guests. This is the National Painting Company. It's a franchise, and what it does is it gives ambitious entrepreneurial college students an opportunity to run their own small business in painting, right? This is the one?
Yes, sir. That's the one. Yes.
And would you recommend that? Well, I don't think anybody I'm actually, people are listening who are in college. So what would you say to them?
I'll give you a little bit of backstory. So I was a junior in college in finance, and all my classes were like, you got to get an internship over the summer, right? That was the number one thing, to get prepared for the job market when you graduate. And I just kept applying, and they, being a college athlete, they really liked that college athlete mentality, the competitive spirit, and yeah. I went in this trainings, knew nothing about painting or anything, but it taught me so much about cold calling, going door to door sales. I was essentially just knocking on doors and then having a budget of other college kids that I hired and paying per lead of just getting people to see, hey, do you need painting this summer, right? That was the whole spring where they gave me a territory. Luckily, I had a very nice territory in Buffalo, a little bit more affluent. So I was just going in those neighborhoods, and my English was way worse. People could really, didn't really, were like, "What are you doing here?" "Oh, well, I'm looking to paint your house." "Well, have you ever painted?" I'm like, "No, but I can measure it." They taught me how to actually measure the square footage on the outside, and it taught me so much about sales and putting signs on the highway at night. Me and my wife, my current wife, we were just going all in, and it was a very successful venture. I ran it was over $100,000 business over the summer. Bought letters, a van, everything. It was just it really taught me a lot. But one lesson I had was I was explaining to other, mentors or people above me what I'm doing, and they were like, "You're crazy. Why would you do that? I mean, why would you go at night, put signs on the highway? Why would you go through this?" And I was very fulfilled internally, but I was not 100% convinced that this was my, conviction. And other people actually convinced me that, hey, no, you should, you go get a banking job, go pursue this career, that you go get 2 masters, go. And I pursued for a decade this venture. But looking back, my instincts and my excitement about Keith knows it, because I was meeting him at night, and I was explaining to him everything what I was doing while I was in college, and the excitement was there. So I couldn't I would say recommend this opportunity. It's not for everybody. Most the bad rep has it that the franchise gives you everything, the funds, it charges you, the fees, the royalties are astronomical, they do, but it's for the right fit and for the right test. It's an unbelievable opportunity, to test yourself and to see, hey, can you actually build it from so.
Well, it's obviously such good training for running a true local blue collar services business. And so many people in our world, in the ETA world of buying businesses, the big gap that they have on their resume is operations experience. And so it feels like we need one of these for like mid-career people to go out and get training or get experience doing a small business operations for a season or for a year before diving in. So too bad that it's just for college kids, because what invaluable experience.
Absolutely. And it's, it's you get what you put in, right? And it teaches you a lot about business. So yeah, it was incredibly, I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
Well, guys, we got a lot to cover here, so let us move on. So you have told us why you were both ready to step off your respective traditional corporate finance paths. Why buy a business? Tell us how the vision that you're now pursuing, how that coalesced.
I would say it kind of went in phases. December of 2022, George and I sat down and said, we've been after this for a decade. Let's go all in and figure this out. And from there, we just started, covering the internet, looking for, biz buy sell, businesses to buy, businesses to start. And we said, we're going to give it 6 months. We're going to give it our all. And from there, if it doesn't work out, then we'll just continue and be happy in corporate. And during that 6 months, we did that. We're working full-time jobs, and we were spending all night searching for businesses, trying to figure it out. I would say the thing that led us to ETA was George being very active on Twitter. He's like, hey, there's these books out there. Let's read these books. Start talking to people. We went through endless networking. We've talked to many of the past guests on your show, and we figured out ETA made the most sense. My background was acquisitions. And so I kind of understood a little bit about that part. And although it's very different working with the SBA. And, once we committed to that, we went through a lot of businesses. We made some mistakes. We started going down some ventures that seemed to make sense at the time, and ended up not what we wanted. Some on the startup side, and with the waste management, that didn't work out. And then once we figured it out, I think it was by April, we had this deal under contract. So we wrote several LOIs. We talked to many owners, and so that's kind of what led us to it, was just sitting down, committing to it. And then once we found ETA, it made the most sense, and we pulled the trigger.
But wait, it sounds like, in fact, even once you discovered ETA, you were still entertaining other things. So while you liked it, it wasn't, and maybe I have this wrong, it wasn't the skies parting, angels singing moment that it is for some of my guests. It was like, this could be one path, which looks good, but then there's these others that you guys apparently dabbled in as well.
Yeah, I would say one thing is we're pretty aggressive with our goals and ambitions. So, we looked at a different franchise, and we were going down the path. We had spoke to the franchisee. Everything looked good, and we said, okay, this makes sense. We can have, somewhat of a base salary and explore other things. There's two of us, so we don't have to run one company. We can run two. And so we had it introduction to an idea as new concept in the waste management industry. And so, we went in to gain as much knowledge as fast as we could. And at first it sounded really good, and I still think it's a good business, but it was a startup. And the more that we kind of looked at it, we wanted to stay away from startups.
Well, I imagine for a couple of guys in their mid-30s doing well in finance, you had hefty W-2 income to replace. Mind sharing what that looked like?
Yeah, I mean, we both in the six figures income-wise. So, we were doing well, especially, here in Buffalo. Cost of living is affordable. So we were doing well. And so that was one of the aspects of a startup. We knew there was going to be a lot of pain, and, jumping into something that's existing. And then another piece of that, I would say, is my background with self-storage and knowing the acquisition side, that we could step in. Part of our model was acquiring mom and pop operated self-storage facilities, coming in, putting in technology systems. And so as we looked at it, we said, well, there's a lot of mom and pop businesses out there. We can kind of apply the same thing here.
Well, that is kind of the model here, a big part of it, or a feature of it. And what did your then search look like? So what were your parameters in terms of SDE that you wanted, basically replacing, or I don't know if you probably didn't expect that you could fully replace both of your salaries all at once. Correct me if I'm wrong. So what kind of SDE were you looking for? How much money did you guys have liquid to put toward this project? Give us some dirty details here, if you would. George, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we were pretty broad. One thing we discovered, and I think we discovered along the way, is we were doing a self-funded proprietary search, right? That's, the terminology. But we were looking for, I would say 1 million to 5 million in revenue businesses. And we looked for, there's a couple of pieces that we heard that they make it appealing, such as recurring revenue, enduringly profitable, businesses that, locally, we do look at, the recessionary, environment, how certain industries are performing in certain environments. So we've analyzed everything, demographics. We looked at in the healthcare space. So our niche was very broad. We did contacted all the local brokers here in Western New York. We were reaching out directly to owners, and very early on, once after several meetings with owners, we identified that we have a very compelling case for owners. Owners trusted us. We were gonna be operationally involved. Our story related with a lot of the local owners here in Buffalo, New York, and it was a very, very appealing process for us, where we actually truly enjoyed learning about the businesses, learning about the story of baby boomer owners who's actually got their kids through college, through their business, went through, with the employees, all the story. And we had a very genuine interest in their business, in their story. And they're, talking about looking at people that have, in corporate that are, 20 years old, 30 years later. We were looking at those at the business owners who are 20, 30, and we had, I was like, wow, this is inspiring, right? This is the, for me personally, it was the American dream, right? It was something that I was, truly, immersed on, and I kept asking questions, getting to know them, and a lot of the owners that was very appealing to them, because the other offers were from a competitor that would buy them out, right? Look to cutting expenses, the typical play from another business. Whether for us, it was all about, the people, the growth, and the interest, the genuine interest in the businesses. So very early on, we're like, wow, this actually, appeals to without actually trying to sell. We were a very attractive buyer, I would say, to a lot of local businesses here.
And in terms of that revenue range, $1 million to $5 million, that's a very broad revenue range. And if we just assume 20% margins, that's anywhere from 200 to $1 million of SDE. So what were you guys going to do? I mean, spoiler, you buy at the low end of that range. But let's say, like at this point in the story where you're considering what you'll buy, if you found $1 million business throwing off $200,000 a year, how is that going? How did the math work on supporting two guys coming from great salaries?
We basically looked at one or two opportunities, right? We knew that this was maybe not if we buy on the lower end, maybe this was not have been the only thing we would do, right? We currently have several other projects on the side, consulting and other acquisitions. So we've always been, okay, this is the first thing, right? We gotta be able to close on, and there was always that urgency component over the last decade that accumulated. So we had that urgency side where we need to close, we need to get it, and we looked at, okay, we could have, look for investors and just go on the other route, but that was, that would just increase the length of our search. That would, play it out. So that urgency was I would say our number, was the fuel behind us, where we say, let's find a business that we can close, and if we can close it with our own funds, right, without raising capital, that's probably gonna, fast track the closing process and get us, where we wanted to be in the shortest amount of period of time. I would say the urgency was a big factor.
So this is a get in the game is more important than finding the perfect business. Of course, the perfect business doesn't exist, but even being too picky about the business.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
and one funny story, Will, is and I'm not trying to give a strategy here, but we did look at all your guests on the podcast. We built a spreadsheet, we ranked all your guests, and we started reaching out, and we were very successful on I would say we had probably between 10 to 20 successful calls with industries, people that we could relate, partnerships, all that component. And I just have in my mind those stories that have been and we did, by listening to some of the stories, some folks were in the search for 1, 2, 3, like a lengthier time, and we're like, that can't happen for us, right? So we got to figure out, what the alternative is here. So and this is a little bit of a thank you to you, because this was, it was very helpful for us in this process.
Good. That's awesome, George. And you're the second guest in as many weeks who has said to me, I heard on your podcast these people who it would take a year or 2 or 3 to search and get this thing done. And I needed to have it happen faster than that. So I guess, the fear of a super long search really motivates people to, and then you get kind of that sense of urgency, and you probably, and obviously you close faster. Great. Keith, anything to add to all this?
The other thing that I would add, kind of, being in acquisitions and in my past life, I knew that every deal has hair on it, and you're going to have to work through something. And then the other piece of this business that we found was the valuation, very attractive valuation from our perspective. So that allowed us to say, this is it, let's move forward.
Great. Well, let's now hear about the business that you found.
I'll start with how we found it. So basically, it was multiple brokers. We've reached out, and we met with a local broker on the other side, and I would say very unsophisticated local broker, late 70s, and I would say discarded him very early on because, coming from, our, corporate lives, we was like, well, this person, doesn't, no computers, very, very, very basic, right? But looking at his listings, he had probably the largest amount of listing on Biz Buy Sell locally. So that was something, learning perspective, that he resonated very well with the baby boomer owner, right? That was actually, which the market was what we're looking for, right? And this is eventually the person that actually, brought us the existing deal here. And looking closer to it, we realized very on that it had a lot of elements that were important to us. Reoccurring revenue, 30-year-old existing business, physical assets, real estate in place. So there were certain things that really attracted us to the deal. It was on the lower side, so that was one of the things that we had to take into account for, and we did, and we decided to move forward on LOI here.
To be clear, you guys quit your jobs and then started searching, or was the idea that you'd quit only when you found a business?
Second, we quit only when we found a business. Yeah.
So it was a, quote, part-time search. You weren't searching full-time. You did a part-time search and then you quit when you found a business. Okay.
We were both working from home, so hopefully our employers don't really, our previous employers, but we were focused a lot of more and more time on the search and, the calls. I mean, it was just, I would say that was I would call it a full-time and full-time search during the day. So.
Gotcha. Okay. And so more about this business. What was the business? What is the business? How big was it? You said it was 30 years old. Has recurring revenue or recurring revenue. So tell us more about what the business actually is.
Yeah, I'll start here and then I'll let Keith kind of add in. So the special part about this business was that it was the business was started initially by a couple that essentially started cleaning themselves, and they've built it to a very successful level. We see this maybe in the industry called a lifestyle business, where the couple had their roles in the business. I think the spouse, the wife, was taking care of almost like an office manager role, and the husband was more on the operations side. But they built it to a very comfortable level. 45 employees. Around 1.5 in revenue, and they were very successful. They were we heard that they were spending a lot of time in Europe. They had an office manager, an operations manager in place, and they sold it in 2021. They sold the business in 2021 to a older gentleman that was not coming from this industry, that acquired it, and with very little janitorial commercial cleaning experience, also very little business experience. So the person who bought in 2021 came in and realized, I think, very early on that this is not as passive as he expected it. I think the vision that he had was you have an operations manager in place, and that person is running the business, and you basically cash flow and you maintain, right? That was kind of his philosophy. But the two key people that were running the business left. So the operations manager and the office manager left. And, since then it was kind of, the business was very trending downwards, right? That previous person had several panic attacks. It was just there was a lot of pain, I think, that we bought the business, after 2 years of this person, owning it, because he realized very early on that he needs to exit, and that's when we came in and we bought the business from this gentleman that that realized the pain.
Well, a few follow-ups here. First of all, everybody listening, so here's an example of somebody who bought a business and thought, "Oh, I'll buy a business and the operator will just run things," and happens, sure, but don't assume you can pull it off. Very perilous, as your seller painfully learned. Cautionary tale. Okay, and then so would you consider this a turnaround? I mean, was this business in outright distress, or was it just kind of on the decline? You needed to, arrest the decline and reverse it. I mean, how dire was the situation at the business?
I'll let Keith take that one.
Yeah, I would say the border of on decline and distressed. The seller had walked away for the most part. He actually took a full-time job while we were under contract and was no longer at the business during the day, had his operations manager there. I think in the time that we went under contract to the time we closed, 3 of the largest customers left. The staff was constant turnover. Staffing was a major issue. So by the time we walked in the door, everyone told us sit and observe for 6 months before you change anything. We did not have that luxury. We had to start making changes immediately.
Well, on the other hand, because there was so much turnover, you probably weren't disrupting that many employees. Part of the reason you don't implement changes early is because the team that you've inherited is not going to respond well to all this disruption. But if the business is churning through employees anyway, maybe there aren't that many people whose lives you'll disrupt by implementing change. So 45 people at the business. How many people were kind of in management, and how many of those 45 were basically field cleaners?
Yeah, the previous, the successful part of the business pre acquisition of the gentleman was that there was a real structure in place, right? There was an ops manager, office manager, and then you had a supervisory level that's crucial to our part of the business, and then you have the frontline staff. Those layers have been kind of eliminated in the last part of the acquisition. So you essentially had the ops manager kind of like removed all that supervisory level, and that person kind of running the entirety of the show, but running it not in the most successful and operationally efficient way. So we realized very early on that second layer of supervisory was missing, and that is, I would say, probably one of the key pieces of the operations of our type of business, and also the business our side. You cannot have 45 employees, basically reporting to one person, and that puts a lot of pressure on that one, ops manager. And also, secondly, the capacity and the ability for that person to efficiently run, the day-to-day operations is you're setting up for failure.
And guys, this was a franchise.
Yes.
So let's hear about that. But what I don't understand is, you mentioned husband and wife started this, so they were franchisees.
Absolutely.
So they were a de novo franchise territory in this franchise system 32 years ago. Okay, and then they built up this territory, but still under franchise. All right, so tell us about your analysis of the franchisor, of this franchise brand.
Yeah, the franchise, we looked into it, and we reviewed the FDD, and we were actually we are not very keen on franchising, to be honest with you, because there's you have the royalty component, and you also have the restrictions component, right? And we came in from corporate, where there's it's all about structure, restrictions, rules, right? And we saw franchising as that side of adding having a business with certain restrictions, but there were several things we liked. The group that, the ServiceMaster group that we purchased was recently acquired by private equity, and there was a lot of, I would say, momentum on the growth side. And we looked at that, and we saw that an opportunistic approach. And fast forward to today, I think, the biggest lesson for me, and then Keith can add on this, is really with a friend, the one feedback we heard from the previous owner was that I had no help. Nobody was helping me. Nobody was, I'm just paying the royalty and I get nothing in return, right? That was kind of the constant feedback. And we couldn't disagree more on that side, because we leveraged all the resources. We went to the annual conference in February. We met, the president of the franchise. They came into Buffalo. They visited us. We expressed our growth and we expressed our vision, and we had so much support from that perspective. And I would say so many opportunities that wouldn't come up from just not being a franchise have come up so far. And also the second part I would like to mention is the network. We met, the most successful owners in the network, spoke with them. We built relationships with those franchise owners, not locally, but, from all over the country. They've done it for 30 years, and they are, current mentors helping us, grow and build the operations of the business that I think, it would be very difficult from a non-franchise perspective. So the short story, Will, is you get what you put in, right? You have to be able to articulate your ask. You have to be able to put yourself out there, and, the reward can be there in a franchise model.
Well, let's push on that a little bit, George, because it sounds like you guys were really proactive, which is great, reaching out to other franchisees and then communicating to the franchisor, meeting the president, and so on, and being vocal about what you wanted to do here. But you still need a franchisor on the other side of the table who's receptive to that. And it sounds like you guys got lucky, if you will, that there was new energy, new blood at the franchisor through this private equity group that had just acquired it, and so that you caught them at a good moment where they're eager to bring in ambitious people and to demonstrate goodwill to the franchisees, I guess. So I think it takes two to tango in that situation, and so I guess the learning would be what just basically try to get to know the franchisor as much as you can, and be vocal about what you acquisition entrepreneur want to do, and just see how they respond, and see if there's chemistry, and see if there's receptivity to what your ambitions are, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's definitely the learning. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and for us, it's important who we work with. I will say we looked at another franchise very similar, acquired by private equity, pushing out technology, aspiring growth, and we just didn't like the personality of that other franchise. And at that point, that was early on, and we actually said we're not going to do franchises if this is kind of the approach. So for us, it really is getting to know them, what kind of support is out there, what those fees you're going to be paying are, and if they're going to change. So it was really just kind of doing our homework and figuring it out.
I guess one of the other things is, this is very specific to your situation, so I'm not sure how valuable it is for the audience, but since the franchise was now under new ownership with this private equity group, talking to the other franchisees and saying, hey, what's it like to work in this franchise? What's it like working with this franchisor? A lot of them were probably like, not that helpful, because they were like, well, it's under new ownership now, so we don't know. There's this moment of uncertainty for everybody, sort of thing. Right?
Yeah,
or no?
Absolutely. That's one thing we kind of noticed coming in, especially the legacy owners in the franchise. There was a lot of rumblings of folks that we talked with that nothing's going to change, or they're just trying to come in and grow. They don't care about the owners. And then there were owners that were legacy owners that were like, this is great, we're finally going to get support. So it really was kind of that mixed feelings among the franchisees that were out there. But the franchisees that we were talking to and aspiring to follow behind were the ones who were excited. And that's kind of what kept us excited about it.
Interesting. So the franchisees that you liked seemed to be fired up.
Yes.
And so that that energy pulled you along. Interesting. Well, I think all of this goes to the point that basically when you buy an existing franchise business, there's just more risk there, and that risk can be good and bad. So because if you there's a whole other relationship there to vet and try and diligence to the extent that you can. That is with the franchisor, how they're going to behave, or how much support, et cetera. So it's just an additional level of complexity when you go to diligence the business that you're looking at buying. But that's not necessarily a negative, because that can be extremely beneficial. I mean, I think George, you're now kind of a proponent of what you guys did. That there was so much, you've gotten so much support. It's really been a cheat code. Now you're paying for it. It ain't free. That's what the royalties are for. So you hopefully you would hope that you are getting something for that. But still, I mean. I'm just reminded my most recent interview, the one that'll probably air before you guys, with Corey Robinson, bought 4 units and then quickly another 8 in a franchise system, Batteries Plus. So retail sells batteries and kind of energy services. So we just did a deep dive as to analyzing the pros and cons of working within a franchise. There's a lot to like about it. Especially if you are acquisition minded from the outset. Guys, you said you communicated your vision to the franchisor president. What is the vision? What was the vision that you communicated to him?
Keith, you want to take down?
Yeah, I mean, our vision is to, first take control of our market. Our mission, our goal is to be the best quality commercial cleaning company in Buffalo. And so we're starting with that. And then it's to grow within our market. We see a lot of opportunity. Quality is one piece of the service that is lacking significantly. I don't think that's just in our market. I think that's in the industry in general. To come in and provide quality service, that's number one. Grow within the market, but then also have the opportunity to roll up within other markets. We've had some of those conversations with other owners, and that's another piece I think that's unique to us is as we've started getting more into the acquisition space, a lot of sellers aren't ready to sell. So we have the opportunity to have that conversation with those sellers of, hey, let's get this, and this in order before we come in and acquire that business. The other piece of it is, we're getting our hands in on operations and down to the, frontline level. I think that going in, that to me, that's one of the benefits of buying small. You can go in and buy at a high level, a large company, and I think you miss some of the details down on that front line. And so that now that we've had the opportunity to see that, we can communicate much better with the franchisor of, hey, we know what happens within this business in the day to day. We can go into acquire this new business and, implement the things that we've learned and, really grow those franchises, those markets as well.
That's a great point. If you want to do a programmatic acquisition strategy in a franchise context, buying small allows you to really educate yourself on how that franchise system works. And improve your first territory or unit or location, and then know how to do the same in subsequent ones super, super well. Like kind of have your own playbook for how to work within this system.
Yep.
But the vision, maybe that's what you said to the president, Keith. So, but I also know that there's a bigger vision here. What is the aspiration here? You guys left these lofty corporate tracks in finance. What is the large aspiration here, if any?
Yeah.
I know
within
number, is there a number, or is it just build a holdco, or what?
I think I look at us, at the high level, we're an acquisition company. We're opportunistic. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of complementary skill sets. And we have a diverse background, real estate, banking, sports and entertainment. So we're looking in those areas, but ultimately we want to identify verticals and roll up within those verticals. So that's the big vision. Holdco would be great. If it comes to that, we'll figure that out. But it is to keep acquiring and buying right. Ultimately, for us, the big thing is culture. We want to have companies that are run the way we want run, the things that we didn't like in corporate. So ultimately, it's kind of continuing to acquire for those right opportunities, but provide a great workplace for employees and do that in every company that we look to acquire.
And Will, one observation here to just give you a kind of a story. When we came in, right, that supervisory, we going for the employees to go through 2 acquisitions in such a short period of time, it's not easy, right? The culture is not there, right? And we actually pushed on a supervisory person who's been through, the two acquisitions, and he's like, "Well, you're just gonna buy it and sell it, in a couple of, like that was the feedback, right?" So that trust and that culture and we didn't really, accounted for that when we came in, right? And we realized it's very so for us building that trust and when the supervisory team or even the frontline staff were going to work, there was no really excitement. I mean, there's very little excitement about cleaning in general, right? Cleaning is a hard job, right? It's not, it's not nothing fancy, but for us, we have the 4:00 meeting here, and having the table full of excitement people, that being happy, having the happy customers, being proud in the job that they're doing, and taking very taking accountability for that. It's been it's just been such a life-changing that we really didn't in our corporate culture. We talked about culture, mission statement, all that. It was all blah blah for me personally, because I never really looked into it until we actually own a business and I understand the importance of culture, because it actually it's life-changing, right? Seeing our employees coming to work happy, having providing a good quality service with the right people was one of our first priority, and that allows us ultimately to grow, right? And without that, we wouldn't be in a position to grow. And we did that instinctively, because taking on growth early on was not something that we could do. We had to basically build that baseline of our employees, and we did our first company picnic. I think in the we had people coming in excited. We have a lot of immigrants and workforce, right, from different baseline, different cultures, and it was just it's cool to see that, and we realized, okay, this is what we want to do actually, because with that growth side and then the ability to scale will come, but it's a must for us.
And George, did you guys plan at the outset that that building culture would be a big part of this? Or was it only once you got inside the business and you saw that there was probably a really bad culture or non-existent culture that you decided culture was something that you should prioritize? Because the way that you're making it sound is like it was, well, you're not making it sound either this way or that. I'm just curious, like, was this an evolution that you realized culture was important, or did you always plan that it would be such a big part of your strategy?
It was an evolution for me personally. It was an evolution, because we understood, right, that the quality of the happiness of our employees is a direct reflection of the quality of work they're gonna be performing, and also it was an evolution for sure, and it just kept that evolution kept going higher and higher, because it's a must in this type of workforce, and we had to let go. I would say we counted yesterday probably 20 plus. I mean, the industry has a high turnover, but we let go of 20 plus people, and we rehired. So there was a lot of rehiring, hiring, establishing that culture as we evolved. And at this stage, we're seeing the results. A couple of 8 months later, post acquisition, is just it's one of the most satisfying place where that we experience.
And this is one of those where you establish a new culture and you say, this is how things are going to be now, everybody. If you're on board, we'd love to have you be part of this new direction that we're taking the company. And if not, we invite you to leave, sort of thing. And so you basically, keep the people on the bus that are down with the new ownership and down with the new culture, and those who are not, are get off the bus one way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. It naturally evolves, right? And it was a lot of mistrust in the beginning, right? Because we were saying those things, right? As post closing, you're right, to the team at our table, to everyone around us. But we had to roll our hands dirty and just go with them at night, gain their trust. And it took several months of building that trust. We brought employees that were let go by the previous ownership just because they couldn't, operate, in those working environments. And I just remember one particular case was one of a top lead supervisor. We called him in, and he's like, "I'm just going to be here for an hour, observe you." Like, a very, very cautious, approach. And it took months and months of just us, doing what we say we're going to do, being with them at night, us cleaning, covering accounts, covering certain things that evolved. And we were looking at each other, while we were doing it at an early stage, and says, what are we doing? Is this worth it? Is this, there's a lot of questions, right? You ask yourself, when you're in the trenches, but like looking back right now, it was all worth it because we see the results, and we're early still.
Yeah. And Keith, weigh in on this as well. This how you built trust and actually doing cleaning or going out at nights. That was, I don't mean this in a negative way, that was performative? That was making a point? Or that was because you actually needed to? Or both? Or what?
No, I would say both, but we absolutely had to. With staffing such an issue, for us, one of the things we looked at is a customer cannot go without service. We were understaffed, high levels of call off. So, in these early nights, I would have to bring my daughter to George's house. She would sleep there, and we would go out cleaning all night. And then, we're in the office first thing the next morning. So, it was a lot of have to.
You guys would go out cleaning all night, the two of you.
Yeah.
Because you were short staffed.
Yes.
How many nights did you do that?
Probably months, couple months, 2 to 3 months.
Really?
I would say. Yeah.
Overnight, the both of you.
Yes.
Great, guys. Good. That is really admirable. That's awesome. And you said early on that part of the bond that the two of you share is that you are grinders. You can grind. But talk to us a little bit about as George said, like looking at each other, being like, is this really what we signed up for? Was this the vision? No, but really, yeah, talk a little bit more about that and just kind of the shifting in the kind of professional identity that you must have been undergoing from high flying kind of corporate careers to this. There's a lot there. That must have been, and how did your family react and so on? What do you want to say about all that? Because that must have been quite a few months of just the psychological development. There must have been something.
Yeah, it was a bit of a change. Going from the corporate job to cleaning toilets, stripping and waxing floors. But I think it taught us a lot. And the big thing with our relationship is we find ways to laugh. I think it's very important. We're very serious. We work hard, but we're able to crack jokes in those times of what are we doing. And ultimately, we knew it was a good business. It's reoccurring revenue. Everybody needs it. Medical facilities, industrial facilities, two of our biggest focuses. And we looked at what happened during COVID. This business stayed open where, many were shut down. This business actually grew during COVID. So, we looked at it as we knew that it was the right business. It's just going to take a lot of work to get it back on track. And part of our relationship as partners and friends, I've looked at George for, 10 years working on getting his green card. And he stopped at nothing to get it. And I have so much respect for him. And I know, someone who's going to continue to grind and work that hard to, take the next step. I knew I had the right person beside me. So, it was hard, but it was easy having someone next to you that's going through the grind with you.
That's so cool, guys. George, you want to add anything? Well, let me jump because I gotta really be watching the clock here because we got a ways to go. We're already an hour into this. The now, despite the fact that this is behind you, that you learned a lot, the kind of character building and understanding of your business building experience that this was, there are going to be people who are hearing this and are like, these guys should have just bought a bigger business. Maybe they learned something about how to clean, but they also could have skipped through that part if they just bought a $500,000 SDE business or what have you. Respond to them.
I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change a thing. And there's a lot of things that go into that. I think that number one, understanding what the frontline workers are doing, how they're feeling, how they're thinking, their attitude towards the job. How can you impact that? Then coming from corporate, you have departments, IT, your computer breaks. Now we've got no one to call. I'm calling George into my office when something happens to my computer, and we just have to figure it out. The problem solving, the stress that comes with it, it's a benefit in the long run. It's difficult going through it, but the learning, and I think that's going to translate as we continue to acquire and roll up because we ultimately are. But it allows us to ask questions and see things that we wouldn't have seen if we weren't in at this level.
And Will, for me, it's like the understanding of operations. We had operations, in banking in our previous career, and I give very little credit and very little value for highly successful operations, managers or professionals, and understanding how I'm very obsessed towards systems and SOPs, right? And understanding how difficult it is that creation and especially implementation of systems at a lower level. It was just like it's something that I right now realize it's so crucially important. And like Keith mentioned, I think going in, we're always going to have being in due diligence with having meetings with next future businesses that we're going to acquire. It is, the questions that we're going to be asking and the due diligence that we're going to have from going down to the details is just such an invaluable lesson. And I realize this when I, speak with other, searchers or entrepreneurs. I can tell right now, it's maybe it's cocky from my side, but I can tell very early on if someone has a deep understanding of, what trickles down to, the operations and the systems and the procedures trickle down to all the way to the front line. And that is just, it's a high pay lesson, but I think it will help us scale incredibly well and make the future decisions in such a much more strategic and beneficial way for us. I don't know. It's a lot of learning that it's a high price to pay. I agree, but I think it's an incredible learning. And 3 months it's been since the beginning of the year. We looked at each other like, let's put the systems in place. Let's get up, and we haven't cleaned since the beginning of the year. So that's so we had to build that up, right? And we had to create it. But I don't know, just the learning and the experience and the background is it's an invaluable lesson that I wouldn't trade it.
I love it, guys. I'm not necessarily going to prescribe that everybody do it. But I'm sold on just how valuable it is. And if you think about it kind of as an investment, as opposed, we think about investment as capital, but an investment of time. And I agree. The return on this investment will be high indeed for years to come, as long as you're in the janitorial business in this franchise system. And the credibility that you built with your employees. They must have been like, who are our bosses? I don't get why they're doing this, but I love it.
And Will, it's like, there's this phrase, I hear in the space that's like, oh, you just put an operator in place. I keep hearing this, right? And then people don't understand that the difficulty of one, finding that operator, and two, if you don't understand the operations or, that you're not going to be able to just put an operator in place because it's I don't know, it's just something that I keep hearing it, in the space, just like, oh, I'm going to put an operator in place and be successful. And I understand that the weight of that phrase so much at a much higher level.
Well, your seller was exhibit A of that, right? That's what he thought he was doing. Okay, guys, let's see here. Before we get too far away from the numbers of the deal and the business, let's hear those just real quick. So it was doing I think you said, George, it was doing $1.5 million when it was sold the first time, or when you guys bought it, it was doing $1.5 million.
Yeah. When we initially went under contract, was doing $1.5 million. We had a lengthy closing period, much more lengthier than expected. So yeah.
And what was it doing then when you got into the business?
I'll let Keith kind of.
Yeah, so it had been hovering around $1.5 million for about the last 4 or 5 years. So under both previous owners, it had stayed fairly consistent. When we went under contract, it was still in that range. Annualized, it had dropped to about 1.1 by the time we closed.
And then did you retrade? You must have.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So $1.5 million, and so let's $1.5 million. What was it doing? What are the margins like in this business? What was the SDE?
I think it was a 380 SDE.
Yep.
So 380 SDE, and we essentially bought it at 2x, including the real estate. So.
Oh, 2x including the real estate. What was the real estate?
Real estate was 250.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it? A commercial building?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Our office here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So 2x of 380 is 760, and 250 of that is the building. So you got the business for 510. Business that was doing 380 and SDE you got for 510. So you got a great deal, it would seem.
Yep.
Although wait, that 380 number was at the after losing the business, or it was at the 1.1 number or the 1.5 million?
That was after.
Number? After. Okay.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Well, that helps. You got a good deal.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Was it a good deal? You're
No, it was a good deal. Yeah, absolutely. And we during due diligence, we had a third party valuation. Banks were very attracted to it, so we had no problem choosing the lender there. So it was a very good deal, and that was another driver on buying small. It was almost I don't want to say too good to pass up, but very attractive.
Yeah. Well, good for you guys. And this is the ServiceMaster brand, is what it's called?
Yep, ServiceMaster Clean.
ServiceMaster Clean. And so that's that you said it's a legacy franchise, so that's a brand with hundreds of territories around the country. Give us a sense of scale, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I believe around 450 franchises throughout the country.
450, okay. All right, just a little bit more on the culture changes and just the immigrant culture. George, you're an immigrant. You've mentioned that. You mentioned it on the pre-call, and a lot of the frontline staff are immigrants. And so, I don't know, just talk to people out there who might be considering a blue collar business where their crews might have a lot of immigrant folks working in them. What would you say about that particular dynamic?
I would say, just from a business perspective, right? Like for me, it's personal, right? One thing we did was very early on was we wanted to meet every single person that worked for us and not just say, hey, we're the owners, but actually understand them. What's their background? What's their culture? What is it? And, we have immigrant workforce from, Ukrainian, Arabic, African, like it's basically a very wide variety of immigrant, and that comes with different cultures, right? And understanding that cultural background is super important because you really have to understand there are similarities within cultures, and for example, the South American or Puerto Rican are some of the best workers, and they take a lot of pride in their cleaning, right? So, the praising and the ability to actually appreciate their work works a lot better than just, going in and yelling and saying, hey, you missed this, versus, someone from Eastern Europe or a different culture where they react. So I think it's just, it's important to understand the cultural background of your immigrant workforce. And, we have couples that have been, engineers, doctors, accountants that have been working for us for 5+ years, and they are some of our best workers that are, full-time workers, and they're extremely, proud and take a lot of pride, and the professionalism level is extremely high. So you can find an extremely valuable workforce. We hear everyone, complaining about the workforce, the quality of work, but you really have to spend the time to, understand, go in a little bit deeper, right? We went above and beyond, because the English is, obviously not our first language, and some of the workforce, they've been in America for 10 plus years, and they still don't speak English because they just live in their respective communities, right? So they don't really need to, and our work, doesn't need English speaking, right? You're going at night, the building is closed, you can just, perform your duties without, required to speak the English. But we have to figure out the communication part, right? So we're downloading certain apps that they communicate in. I understand it because I have, my family in Europe all over the place, so I understand that. And then we translating, the scope of work, details, customer communication, and we really, make sure that that communication piece is in place. And I mean, it's just transformed the quality, and also they just feel like they're being listened. They feel like they're being, understood, and then the reward is just it's so invaluable. I'll stop here.
So to distill that, George, it sounds like it's be attentive to the cultural differences, one group from another. First of all, don't just treat them like sort of an American you'd expect to treat a fellow American. Try to kind of learn, frankly, a little bit about their culture and how they might react in a work context. And then each immigrant group, obviously, from different, every country is a different culture. So that if you got a rainbow staff from a bunch of different countries, that means learn something about all the countries. And then the language too. Do what you what was it? You have an app where I didn't understand communicating in their language.
Yeah.
Bit.
So a lot
How
of
do you do that?
Yeah, a lot of immigrants, and a lot of international outside of the US, they communicate through WhatsApp, right? WhatsApp is one of the,
Sure.
the apps, and very little in the, in the US because it's dominated by the iPhone market, right? The Apple, you have iMessage, right? Well, that's, like a lot of just people don't really even have that side. And, small things like this is I think they're very important. Going, when the Ramadan is coming, going to your workforce and saying, hey, you can start later on, you can do your and as long as the quality is there, I mean, it goes a long way. It goes a long way. Understanding the yearly cycle and just because the labor piece, it is the highest constraint in our business, right? Like everybody talks about it, right? Finding the quality labor. We're playing at the minimum wage and a little bit above it, right? So that space is not easy to be filled, right? And we developed some partnerships with the local refugee groups here. So we're actually we're actually being able to develop those partnerships, and so far we've been successful in figuring that piece of the puzzle, and it's also rewarding, right? We see the excitement and implementing reward system, employee of the month. It's very easy when you don't, in our space, when you don't hear from a customer, you assume that, hey, just everything, no news is good news in our space, right? So rewarding that good behavior, attendance, et cetera, have just been, been very successful ways to grow our business.
And George, when you said earlier that when in corporate, in the corporate context, culture, mission statements and stuff, it's something that a lot of people kind of roll their eyes at and just think is window dressing on just a soulless corporation. But is that to say that now as an owner, you see that differently? Or do you think that in a small business, culture actually really does matter in a way that it doesn't in a corporate? Or I mean, what's changed in the way you view culture?
I think it's just.
Or were you wrong? Were you wrong before? Were you wrong? It always mattered, and you just didn't realize when you were a corporate guy.
Maybe I was wrong, and I that's one thing Keith knows. I admit when I'm wrong, but I think for the smaller the business, it's the most imperative. It's almost like a necessary step to understand, right? To value it, and it's it's actions, right? We can, state it and we can create it and present it. It's all about the day-to-day actions and that consistent behavior, right? And it takes a long time. So I just, for us, it's valuing that, and just it's our strategy going forward for sure. And it wasn't when we came in.
Right. Keith, anything to add on the culture bit?
Yeah, I think the corporate culture side a lot of times feels like an empty glass. You have these mission statements, you get the emails, but that's kind of the level of it. For us, we're involved. We go to, when there's a Burmese fundraiser, we'll show up and, say, hey, meet everybody. We get involved, and then, and we've made mistakes, on trying to change the culture side as well. It hasn't been, we've come in and done this great job. And just an example of that, I believed in this, thought of radical transparency. We're going to tell everyone everything we're doing, what the vision is, what the goal is. And that backfired, and we reversed course. It turns out a lot of folks are scared of growth. Oh, we're going to grow, I'm going to lose my job. So it's a learning process. Like you mentioned, it's an evolution. But it's really about action instead of just sending an email saying, hey, we support this. We're actually showing up, we're being involved. And that translates a lot of ways. One, we see a lot of the other cultures, the other folks getting involved, like, oh, here's a fundraiser at this community that, is a different background than me, and they're showing up. And so, you kind of see that start to happen. And then the other side of it, when you do those things, a lot of folks start bringing people they know, and they bring good people. They're like, oh, they, are translating all of our scope of work, everything we need to know into our native language. It's a clear understanding of what the job is. So, I think it's just actually doing what you're saying instead of just sending out an empty message.
Great, guys. Well, I find it really kind of inspirational that you're building this culture in this very kind of heavily immigrant workforce business. Great stuff. We're going to start wrapping up here. Guys, back to transition. There was more to the transition than culture. We've spent a lot of time on culture, which deserves it. But there was a problematic GM, I think, the people should hear about. And the power of recurring revenue was something that we talked about. Familiar theme to listeners. But let's, it's one thing to know this academically, how recurring revenue is valuable. It's another to feel it. So I want to hear you guys articulate that. First, this GM.
Yes. So,
George is too busy sighing, so he can't talk right now. So you go ahead, Keith.
Yeah. So prior to close, the seller did invite us to come in and observe the day-to-day. Part of it, I think, is because he had taken a full-time job and was no longer there, and maybe wanted an extra set of eyes. But we realized it immediately that there was a problem. The way he was treating the staff was absolutely unacceptable. No one wanted to come into work. It was just creating a lot of issues. We noticed he was not around during the day. He was out supposedly visiting customers. He was not working at night. He actually had another job at night, so he wasn't even answering the phone. We have software to see if our staff is clocked in at night. He wasn't monitoring that, so he would show up the next day and a customer would not receive service. So there was a lot of red flags, a lot of problems, and I actually went away for a few days, and I came back, and there were some major issues. The first thing I noticed when I walked in was our door was broken in our office, and apparently he had locked his keys in the office and decided the best approach to get his keys was to kick the door in. And didn't mention anything, showed up the next day like nothing happened. So, we had to go to the seller and say, I understand, we're about to close. There's a lot of things going on, but we're not going to move forward unless he's removed immediately. So, it was a nightmare for the team, for the business, but we were able to work that out, and we actually had to let him go because the seller said, okay, that's not a problem, but you have to tell him. So, it was quite an interesting experience.
Wow. So you were just under LOI, you hadn't closed, and yet you had to be the ones to fire this unhappy
that's right.
soul. Wow.
For me, it was such a lesson of learning, how one key person can actually, be so, impactful to the organization, right? I didn't really, understood that from my corporate career, and it was just an immediate lesson of how, the importance of hiring right and just bringing the right people along is just such an important piece operationally. So I just learned a lot from what not to do and what and the impact. It was just tremendous learning again.
Well, you guys are learning the hard way a lot of things, though. I mean, it was an eventful transition, or not even yet transition, because you hadn't even closed. You're already getting drama before you've even closed. And when did you close? As of when do you own this business?
So we closed October 31st of 2023. Our initial target close date was June 28th.
Okay, so it pushed, what is that, 3 months? 4 months. 4 months. And you guys use Matthias, right?
Yes, we did.
Let's give Matthias Smith a little plug. He introduced us, sponsor of Acquiring Minds and loan broker. So Matthias helped you guys get your SBA loan.
Yeah, it was an incredible asset and resource in the space, and it's the SMB community in Twitter has been just very helpful. I am part of the different peer groups in the community, constantly networking with folks in the industry, and it's just such a fun. We've always wanted to be part of, something, and I don't know, just the space seems so genuine, and so there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of growth, and I told my wife, I was like, hey, we're gonna have to spend some vacations on some conferences with some. She's like looking at me like, with who? Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, there's a whole community out there of folks like us, hungry, professional, genuine, honest, that are looking to do good in the world, and also, be successful financially and intrinsically. And I'm like, I think this is, it's almost like you always know that you want to be part of, a certain, trend, and it's fun to be to just getting started in that space. So and you're part of it. Well, Matthias, there's countless number of people and professionals in the space that are doing a lot of great things, and it's a fun space.
It's a team sport.
Well, it was
yes,
very well put, George, and I share your enthusiasm and everything you said. It really is a really neat space, and the energy here is intoxicating, really.
Yes.
So the recurring revenue, guys, talk to me about that, and then revenue, your revenue in general. What does the business look like today after what is that 9 months of ownership? Recurring revenue first.
Yeah. So, coming from the self-storage space, I kind of knew the power of recurring revenue. It's not a one-time sale, so to me, I look at it as much of your business is relationship-based. You got to make sure those customers are happy, but it does give you a lot of predictability in planning and looking to the future. So I had a good understanding and understood the value of that. I think that George maybe picked it up a little bit later on seeing it allowed us, honestly, looking at the recurring revenue, it allowed us to come in and spend a few months on operations. We technically haven't even started selling yet. So that recurring revenue has allowed us to stay afloat and make changes and improve operations without have to actively be out selling every day.
And though you haven't been active in selling or really started your proactive selling, where is revenue? Isn't it? It's up, as I recall.
Yeah. So we've grown about 40%. we're around 1.7, 1.8 right now. And that's after the drop. So we were able to pick up some new customers. We had some relationships of within the community who just wanted to make a change. We won back some of the customers that were lost. So and that's all been inbound. We haven't started any outbound sales yet.
Wow, that's a lot of growth for just taking calls. Word of mouth, inbound. Great. So 1.7, 1.8. And circling back now to you guys personally in your own needs for income, what does that look like? So we recall that you said, you wanted to get in the game, you wanted to start your acquisition journey, so you're willing to buy small. But that was just step one. And eventually, you're going to need to see some solid income from this, I assume. So what does that picture look like for you guys? How are you thinking about paying yourselves? What are you paying yourselves? When are you going to pay yourselves? When are you going to do your next acquisition?
Yeah, I think it's I'll start here and then I'll let Keith. It's we do have a third partner as well, and we have several I would say side projects on the side, right? We have several consulting agreements in the I would say self-storage space. We do have a self-storage development project, some marketing and M&A in the space. We looked at several, other acquisitions ongoing. Actually, we have several meetings this week. And there's, we have a financial advising, wealth management, Agarwood partnership there. So we tennis league. So we have several things that are, starting to evolve in parallel. We keep ourselves very, very busy, Will, and our time and focus is very diligently planned on a Sunday night call for several hours. And it's all kind of building that foundation and really being very I would say intentional about our actions. And I'll kind of Keith here maybe elaborate on several things.
Yeah, I think that's one of the other things when we looked at this business. We did have funds to buy bigger, and that's just part of being diligent over the last decade. And I'll say I cashed out my retirement, my 401k, to put toward this to live on. And buying this size of business gave us an idea of how long we can survive, how long we can make it. So there was a lot of planning, a lot of budgeting. I would say we're both pretty simple, where we're not going on lavish vacation. We're working, so there's not a lot of money spent on the extra things, and we know what that minimum number is. The salary that we can take from the business supports that at a minimum level, and that allows us to focus on the growth. So ultimately we knew we're going to be a little bit strapped, but we will be able to survive. And to me, it's been working out well. Able to cover everything we need to cover. We have opportunities for more growth. And then, the consulting side allows us to bring in extra as well, along with some of our other ventures. So, we knew there was going to be pain. We knew there was going to be investment. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're in good shape and we can continue to maintain this. But, it continues to build every month as well. Every month, revenue is growing, bottom line's growing. So,
yeah. So just to be clear, you guys had some savings from well over a decade in corporate, either liquid savings or in retirement. Keith, in your case, you actually cashed out your retirement. So in some ways, you're dipping into your savings. You're leaning on your savings. You also are paying somewhat out of something to yourselves out of the business.
Yep.
So that. And then you've got the consulting. You'd mentioned that earlier. I forgot to ask about it. You've got kind of the consulting and some other stuff that also supplements the income. And this is how you're currently living. And it's all below what your W-2 salaries are. But of course, it's also just temporary.
And a supporting wife on my end, Will. So that's I think that's incredibly important.
Totally.
Been been together for more than a decade, and she always knew that this was my passion and mission, and couldn't be more grateful for that, because it's such an important piece that knowing that I'm going to spend more time on the call with my business partners than her on certain weeks and days, and then fully supporting that. Can't take that for granted, because that's
Totally.
that's
Keith, you're his work wife.
Yeah, that's right.
I do have to say, guys, you did say that your search was successful when you went all in, or when you kind of fully committed to it. Now you did part-time search. You didn't. So obviously you're able to do anyway. You did your part-time search, but then the agreement was you were going to go all in on the business. But in fact, you're still juggling multiple things. Now, maybe you have to, because the consulting stuff provides necessary income, but it doesn't feel, in fact, like you're 110% in the cleaning business, because you have other concerns as well.
Yeah. The thing I'll say is, we don't sleep much. So we are, we're spending a good 12, 14 hours a day on ServiceMaster. And then we're supplementing in those other areas. It's good relationships, with consulting. It's not as time-based. So, whether it's a Sunday or whatever the case may be, we're able to do that. But that's also part of that bigger vision, right? So we're working on our own self-storage development at the moment. Real estate is going to be part of our portfolio in the future. So we do see it as part of that bigger picture, while also, continuing to grow and support ServiceMaster at the same time.
Okay. So it's not there's not opportunity cost to it. It is part of this holdco or portfolio of assets that you're building over time.
Absolutely.
What didn't we get to, guys? Anything that we should have talked about that I haven't yet asked you about?
One thing I like to mention, Will, is the power of partnerships. I think it's I keep hearing it a lot in the space, and I see a lot of more unsuccessful and struggling part than successful, and I think it's just so incredibly important to understand. This is something I wish I would like to communicate to the audience or to folks in the industry, because it's one of the most important decisions that you're going to make, is that power of partnerships. And in our case, I couldn't be more happy with, Keith and Taylor coming along on this and just building it. And because ultimately you're going to be pushed to the limits on, on very often occasions, and understanding, who basically the strength and it's an evolving door, right? And being able to be vulnerable, more and more vulnerable along the journey is just such an incredible piece. And I just, I like to, bring that up, because it's incredible. It could really define the success or the failure of your journey, and also the road that you're kind of following, right? It's because, right now, right, we have so much, pain. Probably listeners listening to this is like, man, this sounds so painful, but it's the best time I've had in my life. like this 8 months is the most fun I've ever had. It's the most I felt alive, and I wouldn't change it for anything. And that's because of the partnerships and the journey coming together. And I think that's very important. And it could have gone on the other side fairly easy, right? Like we had, there's more reasons for it to fail and for it to be pushed. So I just, I wanna just communicate that aspect.
I'm glad you did, George. That was great. Well, George and Keith, you reached out to a lot of Acquiring Minds guests. So as you know, I always say at the end, if people want to reach out to you, how do you prefer they do that? Do you like, George, I guess you're on Twitter, active on Twitter. Is that the best place, or LinkedIn, or somewhere else?
Yeah, Twitter and LinkedIn are probably the best ways. Looking to give back again. I'm looking to be part of the community, and however I can help. Definitely Twitter and LinkedIn are two best ways for sure.
Or just LinkedIn in your case?
Just LinkedIn.
Great. Well, always remember, audience, that if you do ask one or both of these gentlemen to hop on Zoom with you, that you use their time respectfully and do your homework, because if you haven't yet gleaned it from the episode, these are a couple of busy guys. So their time is precious. George, Tibil, Keith Fields, thank you very much for coming on Acquiring Minds. Congratulations on this first acquisition of what I'm sure will be many more.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you, Will. And thank you for everything you do for the community. Appreciate it.
Thanks, George. I hope you enjoyed that interview. Make sure you subscribe to the Acquiring Minds channel below. We are now publishing twice a week, so tons of new interviews and stories to come. Stories that will help you along your own path to acquiring a business.